be the best you. I'm your host, Luke Briggs. This is a podcast where we give you the best information on how to become your best self in your health, wealth, and relationships. According to The College Investor, 90% of millionaires invest in real estate. So if you've ever thought about investing in real estate, you're going to want to pay attention because you're about to learn from someone who's built up a $250 million real estate empire. John McKenzie is the owner of McKenzie Apartment Company. He currently owns 1,500 apartment units and has developed over 350 acres of single-family housing and condominiums in the Madison, Wisconsin area. He's got an incredible story that started with him driving around California, Arizona, and Texas, often sleeping in his car, to figure out the best place to get started with real estate investing. John shares his amazing journey of building up success initially, almost losing everything he had, and then how he learned from his mistakes to rebuild himself into the success he is today. In addition to building up tremendous amounts of wealth, John is also a wonderful human being. He's now using the financial success he's gained to give back to the community and step into a role as a philanthropist. John has been a longtime supporter of the Boys and Girls Club and donated $1 million to help build a facility in Sun Prairie, Wisconsin that will offer meals, a preschool technology room, and enough programming for nearly 200 children at a time. He's lived an incredible life, and now he wants to give back. John is going to talk about how you can get started investing in real estate as well to build your wealth. And if you already invest in real estate, then you're definitely going to want to tune in because John talks about the trends he sees in the industry and the mindset you need to have to take your game to the next level. Even if you have no desire to invest in real estate at all, John has an abundance of knowledge about what it takes to be successful and make an impact. You are not going to want to miss out listening to this episode. So now, it's time for the interview with the man who's living proof you can achieve anything if you set your mind to it, John McKenzie. All right, I am here with John McKenzie. John, thanks for coming on the show.
Oh, you're welcome.
So you are here in town in Madison, Wisconsin right now because you are having a Boys and Girls Club facility that you donated to named after your family, the McKenzie Boys and Girls Club. And as we know, the Boys and Girls Club does a lot of great for this community. So before we get into kind of your journey of overcoming the challenges you overcome to build the success you have, I want you to just talk kind of first about what it means you've been on this journey to be able to impact and start a facility like this that impacts so many people and have it like named after your family's name. Like, what does that mean to you to have everything happen and then be able to do something like this?
I think I have a feeling that I owe it to give back, and that's not anything that I think anybody should feel is special. I recognize I had a lot of advantages. I had parents that stayed together and supported me, sent me to college. I had a good education before college, and I'm a white male, so you just have certain advantages that you realize not everybody else has. And so for many years since we felt like we had enough to start giving back, we've started giving back, and it's been a lot of different things. But one thing that my wife and I have really focused on is disadvantaged kids, and we sent one kid through college in a full ride that was a minority student, and we've done other things with the Boys and Girls Club. But I've been trying to put together a skilled training facility, and trying to work out a deal between the Madison Area Builders Association and the Boys and Girls Club. And it just so happened that the Boys and Girls Club acquired an old church that is probably over 20,000 feet. It's a big facility on 2.6 acres of land. And they had started a job of rehabilitating the thing, but they ran out of money. So Michael Johnson, who's become a close friend of mine and is the CEO, just invited me over to bounce some ideas off of me, and I think he had bigger ideas, But by the end of the day, my wife and I committed $1 million to the facility, and I must say what it does for me is more than it cost me, and I mean that sincerely. It really feels good to be a part of something like this, and the Boys and Girls Clubs is I think one of the best nonprofits out there in terms of converting contributions into helping people. So it's a unique facility because it's going to do daycare as well as the regular school stuff, and then we're going to do skill training in the end. So it's cradle to career. So it's just a wonderful use of money, and we were very proud to be a part of it.
Awesome. And like you said, I mean, it's just impacting, disadvantaged youth like that is just such a huge need in our community. And, it's so awesome that you're able to, build up the resources to be able to do that.
Yeah. I've been very fortunate. This, it's been hard work, which we'll talk about, but
Sure.
Also to be in this country and in this community with the banking system that we have and a very stable economy, it's, I've been very fortunate, and I recognize that.
Awesome. Well, yeah. Well, speaking of kind of your journey, before we get into that, I recently saw a stat. So you're a real estate investor and have obviously built up a very successful real estate company. So I saw a stat recently by the College Investor that states that 90% of millionaires have built their wealth, at least in part, due to real estate and investing in real estate. So obviously it's something that you're very partial to and have built up success with. So of all the ways you can build wealth, why is real estate such a good avenue?
That's a good question. Well, I think that for the element I've been in is really what I can speak to best. It's a fairly complex thing to do to put a big project together. And therefore, not everybody can do it. I mean, it's relatively easy to start a little business, where you dry cleaning business or something like that. But
Sure.
Real estate involves, and on the scale that we're doing it, where we're building apartment projects that are 300 or more units, you have to pull together the government. Well, first of all, you have to find the property. So then that's all, every aspect of it's competitive. And then you have to pull in the government, and you have to figure out how to convince them to let you do what you want to do. And then you've got finance, you've got to get banks to agree to loan you money, and you've got architecture and design and engineering, and then you've got construction, and then you've got management on the end. So there's a lot of components to it. I don't think it's anything that the average person couldn't figure out. It's just daunting to get into it.
Totally.
Yeah, so I think that's probably why. And another thing is the tax advantages that it gives you. They allow you to depreciate an asset, an apartment project, for example, against your income. So in many cases, your tax bill is relatively small, as long as you continue building.
Totally. And like you said, it's definitely something that is not easy, but for people who are willing to take the risks and take the chances and trust in themselves, it seems to be an avenue that a lot of people have gone.
Oh, sure. And as people have successes, more people get interested and more people get involved. So yeah, and currently the apartment market's really competitive.
I bet. All right. So now that we kind of laid that groundwork, now I want to talk about your story, because obviously you've had, you've built up everything that you've had yourself. Like, you've done a really fantastic job of overcoming lots of challenges, like developing a mindset to have success. So I want to start from the beginning before we get into, the challenges and success that you've had. So what was young John like when you were growing up in like middle school and high school? Like, were you always this driven? Were you thinking about success?
I was sort of rebellious. And I've said this before, that I think it's hard for schools to sort out who is going to be an entrepreneur and who is going to be a criminal, because they pretty much act the same way.
Sure.
In school, you want to take over the class, you don't want to listen, that kind of thing. So I was always figuring out little pranks and things which would get me in trouble. But my dad remembers me as a 3-year-old wanting to push the lawnmower. So I was always wanting to get involved, and from a very young age, I was interested in making money. And that goes back, I think my earliest job was when I was 9 years old, when I picked up gum and cigarette butts for 25 cents an hour. And I still hate gum and cigarette butts. But,
Sure.
but anyway, so I did that, and then eventually moved on to lawn mowing, which I liked better. And I had a painting business when I was in college, where I had 8 guys working for me, and I grew nursery trees to sell. And so I always had something going on.
All right. Awesome. I love that analogy. You're either going to be an entrepreneur or a criminal.
Well, I mean, I think school is hard for particularly boys who have a lot of energy.
Yeah.
You know, it's just not something where you're going to sit there and pay attention to a chalkboard, and so your mind wanders. And yeah, I think it's, in order to be successful, you have to have a bit of the rebel in you. I mean, you have to.
Sure.
If you think about developers, most of them are characters in a way. They think big, they're audacious, and they don't accept defeat. That's really important. You have to have a goal. You have to, plan your way toward it, and you have to say you have to have it in your head that you're going to be successful, because you get a lot of reasons to quit. Right?
Sure.
A lot of
Sure.
rejection, and particularly in the beginning, a lot of hurdles. But as long as you keep at it, and you know you're going to get there, you get there.
Awesome. That's good advice. So, in high school, now let's move on to college. So talk a little bit about your college days, like what you studied and how you transitioned into real estate.
Again, I was not a stellar academic career. I mean, it was easier to get into college in those days. And I don't know, maybe I would have tried harder under these circumstances.
Sure.
But to get into the University of Wisconsin when I was young was much easier. I must say I got a lot out of my college experience, but it wasn't the academic stuff. It was all the other things I was doing.
Okay.
And I'm not, I shouldn't say I'm ashamed of it. I'm not really, because I had a heck of a good time. But I really wish I'd have taken better advantage of the wonderful institution that the University of Wisconsin is, and particularly the real estate school.
Sure.
And I don't know why I didn't focus more on it at the time. I think you hear that frequently from people later in life. They say,
Sure.
I wish I'd, but you had all these social things going on.
Uh-huh.
But I had this painting company, this business, during college, and did pretty well by it. So I always had that going on, and I always figured there was a future out there that I was going to figure my way through.
And I think that story that you just told can resonate with a lot of people, because I think a lot of people think like, okay, well, I have to be successful and think like that from the time I'm 12 years old, otherwise I have no chance in life. So, I mean, how did you kind of develop like that mindset that, okay, like I might not be doing my best in the world right now, but I know that I have the potential to do better?
I don't think you can learn that. I think it's just in you. I think I would when I was in my late teens and early 20s, I would throw myself into situations that were really risky.
Okay.
Like I used to like to whitewater canoe.
Okay.
And I was looking at this rapids one time, and I thought, I'm just going to go in there without a canoe. And I bounced my way through the rocks, but got through. I jump off of big rocks into the water. I had a really dangerous thing I did in Colorado.
Wow.
Where there was a drainage ditch that came out of the lower end of a dam, and there were signs that said "Danger, do not enter." And this water was, really flying along, and then there were hooks that you could grab onto to pull yourself out.
Yeah.
And there were only 3 of them.
Okay.
And I went out there by myself without even telling anybody. And if you miss the third hook, you get sucked underground and you die. And I haven't told many people this because it makes me sound crazy, but I just had to find out that I could do it. And I went out and I threw myself in. I missed the first hook. And I got the second hook, but then I couldn't hold on to it. And I grabbed the third and I got out.
Oh, my gosh.
So, I mean, I don't know what that says about me, but I don't do that kind of stuff anymore. I mountain climbed for a long time.
Sure.
I found that really thrilling. But I think it suggests a confidence that you can work your way through situations. And I think I hadn't fully formed my self-image yet. And it was a challenge kind of thing. That later, with better direction, I think has helped me in what I've done.
Okay. Good deal. Well, yeah, again, not necessarily for everyone, but...
not for anyone.
Not for anyone. Not for anyone, for sure.
No.
I wouldn't recommend it, but okay, so let's talk about, you're out of college now. How do you transition into real estate?
Okay. Well, I got out of college and I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I graduated with a business degree, so I knew it would be something in business. And I ended up going to work for an insurance company in Milwaukee, and I absolutely hated it. Selling insurance was I'm not wired that way, and I didn't want to make cold calls. I didn't want to talk to. I mean, it just was awful.
Yeah.
So I was there for about 4 or 5 months, and I was so unhappy. For the first time in my life, I started smoking cigarettes, so that I would smoke a cigarette so I didn't have to make a call. And then I'd go home for lunch and run. Does that make any sense?
Yeah.
No, I was just very
Maybe
unhappy.
at the time it did.
No, I was just really unhappy. No, it didn't make any sense. But I was just really unhappy with it. But I had read a book, Think and Grow Rich, by Napoleon Hill, which is still relevant. And,
Yes,
and
totally.
that book I had in my head, and I'm sure you've read it, but the premise of the book is that you need to make a plan, a goal,
Sure.
and then set a time frame for it and a plan. And I'd also read how I turned $1,000 into $1 million in real estate in my spare time. I don't know if that book's still around, but love the title. So anyway, I had this in my head that's kind of where I wanted to go, and I came up with a plan to get me out of insurance. And I decided that I really needed to shake myself up. And so I figured I should get away from Madison, because I was going back to Madison every weekend to have fun with my friends.
Sure.
And if I was going to get on track, and a lot of them weren't, it's probably about 24, just 3 or 4.
Just 23 or 4. Okay.
So I decided I wanted to move to the fastest growing city in the United States.
Sure.
And at the time, the Sun Belt was booming, and that was California, Arizona, and Texas. So I quit the insurance thing. I took money that I had saved up from my painting business, and I went on the road for 3 months. And I went to each of the big cities in those 3 states, and I collected growth figures and economic trends and land use maps and that kind of stuff. And often slept in my car to save money.
Yeah.
And I was a little Chevy Vega, and I'd pull into a nice neighborhood, and I'd get in the back, and I had a sleeping bag. But anyway, I collected boxes of information. And the cities were San Francisco, Los Angeles, Orange County, Phoenix, Tucson, Houston, Austin, and Dallas.
Okay.
So I came back, and San Diego. So I came back, and I spent about a couple weeks in each city to see if I liked it. And I came back wanting to move to San Diego. That was a really cool place.
Sure.
Still is. The last place I wanted to move was Houston, Texas.
Okay.
Unfortunately, Houston, Texas was the place with the greatest opportunity. So I came back, I did a little more painting to save some money, and I moved to Houston. And not knowing anybody.
Bold moves.
Like throwing yourself in a ditch, right?
Yes, totally.
And I pretty soon learned that there was this guy, Gerald Hines, that had built pretty much the entire skyline of Houston. And I just set on a path of hunting that company down and going to work for them, which I did. And then I applied this 5-year plan that I had. My plan was I was going to work for 5 years, get into the development group. They were building 50-story high-rise office buildings. Sharpest guys in the country. They were really fabulous. Guys coming out of Wharton and Stanford and MBA programs, top of their class. And then for some reason, me. I talked my way into it. But anyway, they transferred me from Houston to Cincinnati.
Okay.
A 27-story building there, and then to Seattle, Washington for 42-story building, I think it was.
And how old were you at this time?
Probably 27.
Okay.
And then to San Francisco, ultimately, to build a 50-story office building. And turns out, I had a 5-year plan. 5.5 years later, I quit and went into business for myself, which was my plan.
Mm-hmm.
The plan included learning everything I could, but then saving. I thought it was going to take me a year to find a project, so I saved up enough money to last me for a year.
Okay.
And then I just went about, just like a private investigator. I started looking at every area of the Bay Area,
Mm-hmm.
piece by piece, and looking at every deal that was available or not available, turning over rocks until I found something.
Mm-hmm.
And I look back on that, and that's even crazier than jumping in that irrigation ditch, because there was no reason to think any lender would loan me money.
Mm-hmm.
And that is a really, really competitive market.
I'm sure.
But if I had to give anybody advice about, if they're on the fence, you just got to throw yourself in and do it. And I found my first project, which wasn't anywhere near the kind of thing I thought I would be doing, but it found a 6-story historic hotel in Santa Cruz, California,
Mm-hmm.
and got it under contract, got a partner, a guy I knew who had some experience in real estate. But we were guys with no money,
Sure.
right?
Sure.
So it was, I think we had to pay, I don't know, like $1.5 million for the building, something like that.
Okay.
And so I had to go find a lender. And we went out and we talked to 26 lenders.
Okay.
25 of them said no. And it was getting kind of scary,
Yeah. I would say.
And anyway, we found one lender who was an equipment manufacturer, Ingersoll Rand, who was in the lending business for about 6 months. Honest to God. And they loaned us the money to buy the hotel. And then after that, we pieced together, some government financing and some lines of credit and stuff. And we totally renovated this place, redid all the retail, redid the units upstairs. There was a biker bar, and we kicked the biker bar out. We took the roof off the bar, put on a translucent retractable roof, opened it up into the lobby, signed a lease with a big Mexican restaurant.
Mm-hmm.
And within a pretty short period of time, we decided to sell it. And we made $1.4 million. So all of a sudden I had, $700,000 in cash.
Wow.
And we thought that was really cool.
Yeah.
But, and so then we thought we would just replicate this. Because there are all these historic hotels that were built in the 20s and 30s. And we drove up Interstate 5 and all the way up to the state of Washington. And we ultimately put together 8 of them, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Each one we did worse progressively. Because we were not experienced enough to understand our limitations.
Okay.
And which is a lesson I learned hard.
Yeah.
But the farther we got away from home, the less information we had. So we made mistakes. We weren't able to hover over it and be there all the time. So we had employee problems and other problems. And then happened to coincide with the collapse of the economy in 88, 89. And it took me Well, then an earthquake happened and impacted one of our buildings. We didn't have insurance
Oh
on it.
no.
So it was just a series of catastrophic events, and really, really tough. It was harder than finding the first thing. But I ultimately decided to move back to Madison, dispose of all the real estate. Took me, I would say, 8 or 9 years to work my way out of it.
Yeah.
But came back here and got involved in, and just looked, again, it took me a year to find something. Found a piece of vacant land to build apartments in Middleton, and my dad and brother came in as partners with me. And then, from there for the next 25 years or so, it was just a series of successes. And but I definitely learned that you have to really, it's such a competitive business.
Sure.
You have to manage the heck out of each part of it.
Sure.
And beat everybody else on every part of it. And for me, I decided I didn't want partners.
Okay.
Now I don't have any, but other than initially my dad and brother.
Uh-huh.
But I didn't want to bring in outside investors. I just wanted to do one project at a time, do it really, really well, and then keep it. And whereas other guys will use investors, or do like what's called a REIT, a real estate investment trust, where they have a ton of investors, and then they blow it up and they get, thousands and thousands and thousands of units. We've done about 1,500, but all of them, I think, unusually productive, unusually successful.
Yes.
And then we get all of it. We don't have to share it, and so there you go. It's worked out.
Well, yeah, I mean, clearly it's worked out. I just want to highlight a couple things you said in that story that are not common. So you were rejected by 25 lenders and still had the wherewithal to keep pushing forward, even though more and more and more people kept telling you no. You lost just about everything you had at one point. You struggled for, you said, about 8 or 9 years. Like, I mean, that is like not things that most people would think to do, like to keep pushing forward in those situations. And that's something that obviously, as you talked about, is highly important to becoming successful, is having the ability to, when things get tough, to continue to push forward. So you said it's kind of like you either have it or not, but let's say it's like someone right now is listening to this story and they're thinking like, holy cow, I don't think I could ever do that. How would you recommend like that person develop like that type of mindset to be able to do something like this?
Well, I think if you don't have the mindset to to be successful and to persevere, I really don't think that's something that you can create.
Okay.
But I think more people do have it than appreciate that they have it. I mean, whether they've been able to lose weight or whether they've been able to accomplish something athletically or any number of things. I think what stops people more often is that they have invented reasons that they can't be successful. Right? I mean, even when I was suffering, struggling,
Yes.
I just knew I was going to make it. So I would say for anybody who has that in them, in their gut, don't worry. I mean, everybody thinks, well, I don't have any money. Well, I didn't have any money. That isn't the hurdle, right? I saw a posting on Facebook that just drove me crazy.
Sure.
And I never respond and I just couldn't help myself.
Okay.
But this this person posted this thing. I didn't even really know her. I don't know her at all. Never met her. But anyway, somehow she got as a Facebook friend. But
Sure.
there were 7 reasons for success,
Okay.
and it was like a legacy of Ivy League schools that your father got you into, club memberships. A grub stake to get started.
Uh-huh.
Even had something in there about journalists always asking you why you were successful, and they just buy into that you did it yourself kind of stuff. I can't remember what the other ones are. Equally annoying. And I just couldn't help myself. So I responded, I didn't have any one of those things. Not one of them.
Yeah.
And I said, life's worked out pretty well for me. One thing I do know is success requires a lot of hard work and no excuses. And I'm sorry, but everything on your list is an excuse. So then she couldn't help it. And she responds back to me before I defriended her. Well, you're a white male. There you go. Well, I think that there are a lot of well-meaning people who give excuses to people for failure, right? If you have everybody believing that you can't be successful because you're an African American, you can't be successful because you don't have money, because society is holding you down, or this, or you're short, or whatever, then those get into your head.
Yes.
And they keep you from putting forth the effort that's going to make you successful. And so I think you can't make excuses. You have to be the kind of person who says, it's all on me.
Sure.
If I don't get somewhere, it's not because somebody stopped me, it's because I didn't figure an innovative way to do it.
Yes. Yes, I love what you just said there, that it is right. I think a lot of people have in their heads that, the people who are successful already started that way, right? Like they already had the privileges to become successful. And obviously what you're saying and what your journey has been is that this isn't something like you didn't just start out, a mile ahead of everyone. Like you had to build it yourself. You had to not make excuses. You had to persevere. You had to push through when the times are tough. So for you, it's really been about what you do with your life and just taking control and taking ownership.
Yeah, and take some risks in life. Failure to achieve is certain if you never try.
That's true.
Right?
That's true.
And I think that's worse than trying and failing. At least when you fail, if you're paying attention, you learn something. Right?
That's
if you never
true.
try, you never get anywhere. So I just think, real estate, since that's what we're talking about, I think you just gotta say, all right, I'm gonna get something. It doesn't have to be big. And started smaller. The money part of it, you'll figure it out somehow. Talk to 25 lenders or 30 lenders, or you'll get investors, or you do what you have to do to get it done. But it's all on you. Success is really all on you.
Well, very well said. So why don't we stay on that topic right now? That kind of transitions us into our next part. So as I mentioned before, so many people who have built success have done so through real estate. So a lot of people out there, and even ones, as my wife and I are real estate investors as well, have thought about getting into it, have talked about, hey, this would be like, whether it's, flipping houses, buying and selling land, apartment buildings, whatever, have talked about it. But, whether it's limiting beliefs or not knowing what to do. So as someone who's built up success in that area, and you're talking to someone who's thinking about getting into it, what advice would you give them? Like, hey, this is what I would do. Step 1, step 2, step 3, this is the mindset I would have.
Yeah. Well, I guess I look back on how I approached it, and that's, kind of I think made some sense. And that is that you say, I'm going to try to become the foremost expert on one thing in one area. And you only get that by looking at a lot of things, right? Now, when I did it, when I got started, I got in my car, and it was before the internet, but we had these little cross-reference, they were like maps, but they would take a square mile, let's say, on a page.
Yep.
And I would take an area, and I would drive every street in that area and look for what I thought might be an opportunity. And For example, I would look at an apartment building, and if it had a lot of cars up on blocks, no advertising sign, and overgrown landscaping, I figured they weren't making as much money as they could if they got better tenants, right?
Yeah.
Paid more regularly.
Yeah.
You had a sign that people could see, right?
Sure.
And you trimmed up the landscaping and made it look better. And so I would, even if they weren't for sale, I'd find out who the owner was. There's ways you can do that. And I'd call them up and I'd see if they were interested in selling. Now, that is not, you're not going to have a high level of success doing that, because most people who have something and they don't have it for sale are not going to sell it.
Sure.
But as it turned out, one of them I called on, the guy said, well, no, I don't want to sell this one, but I've got this old building in Santa Cruz, California. It's 6 stories. I've got 19 investors. They're driving me nuts. I hate it. I'd sell that. So I think, it's just turn over a bunch of stones. Now, the more effective way to do it is to get a realtor.
No doubt.
And then and have them do a lot of the legwork for you. But there's a range of some of these people. I know we're very credible now, and I'm not going to say who the realtor was, but we contacted a realtor to find us an apartment site. Oh yeah, well, you never did anything. And then we found this one thing, they had the wrong information on it. I mean, it's just, so you gotta find somebody who's persistent, diligent. You gotta stay on it. You gotta do your own work. But I'd say just decide, okay, read everything you can. There's all kinds of stuff on the internet now and books. I would read Think and Grow Rich.
Yeah.
There are multiple books out there that'll tell you the steps that you go through on real estate, right?
Yep.
Read all the periodicals and stuff you can to find out what's hot. Is it commercial real estate in particular area? Is it where are guys making money?
Yep.
Sort of follow success, and then try to be innovative. Try to figure out, okay, what is somebody not thinking about?
Sure.
Like the last project I did before the one I'm doing now.
Yep.
I couldn't find an apartment site, and so I started looking at cities do maps of, zoning. They want apartments here, they want retail there, they want offices here, and usually they're pretty much set in stone. But I decided I was going to look at Madison's neighborhood plans, they call them, and see what they maybe approved 10 years ago. And everybody is thinking that's what should be there, but isn't moving now.
Okay.
Apartments are hot. Maybe I can convince them to change the use, make a deal that way. Well, I found such a thing, and the guy said, yeah, I'd be happy to sell to you.
Okay.
Because his office park was going really slow. And so I called the planning department, and they knew me. And I said, I think you've got this listed as employment district. What is that? You seem to have thousands of acres of employment district and not much employment. Well, that's where people make things, factories and that kind of stuff.
Sure.
Well, so this place over here is right next to a residential neighborhood. That doesn't make sense. It should be apartments.
Right.
And it should be in the city's interest to have apartments there because you get more tax revenue, and right now it's just a farm. Right?
Sure.
And they said, not only will we not do that, we won't even talk to you about it. So I still thought that this should happen. So I started working the alderman, and I started working the mayor, and got the feeling eventually that they encouraged the planning department to just talk to me. So the planning department had a pretty bad attitude about it,
Yeah.
And they said, well, we won't approve this unless everybody in the neighborhood supports you. And so then I just worked the neighborhood, and I went around and I got, this is the kind of stuff we build. It's going to be really nice, much better than having a factory next to you.
Yeah.
And the neighborhood became the biggest advocate that I had. And ultimately the city allowed us to rezone it. So, just think, the more you more you hunt around, the more people you talk to, the more effort you put out, something that nobody else would have thought of,
Yes.
or something you never would have thought of,
Yes.
is in your head. So I think to be successful at anything, it has to be a bit of an obsession, right?
Right.
I mean, you are one of the most disciplined people that I've ever met. I saw when we did that thing at that brewery, they offered a little, you didn't even have a drink because you were so, and I've heard you say, you just have to be very rigid about it and not make any exceptions. And it's that same mindset that you have to be really disciplined and really obsessed with it. And then you might think of something when you wake up at 2 a.m. because it's in your head. You're rewiring your head towards success.
Well, that's a lot of wisdom right there. And as you said, you kind of need to do a lot of research, because I think a lot of people just get overwhelmed. Like, there's so many things out there. I just don't even know what to do. I'm not even going to start. So it sounds like you pick, do your research, pick a niche, pick something, and really get obsessed with it. I mean, you got rejected by people, and you're like, you didn't accept that rejection. Like, you talked to other people, and you found a way to make it happen. So, I mean, clearly, like, the steps, and obviously apply to a lot of different areas as well, whether it be, business or health or any of those things as well, to just not quit, and just obsession to the point where you are willing to do whatever it takes to make it happen.
Yeah. Yes. I've never think when I've made a decision that I can do something, I've never let it into my head that I won't be successful. And if I'm not there yet, I'm just not there yet.
Yet, right? All right. Well, you mentioned like opportunities, looking for opportunities. So we're in 2020 now, new decade. So what do you see as some of like the best opportunities in real estate that maybe like weren't even around a while ago that like people can really take advantage of now?
Oh, I think what's happened, well, housing, right? I think things that, I mean, like technology is so rapidly evolving now. Any business that's related to technology, you better be ahead of everybody rather than behind everybody. So that makes things, I mean, you think about a shopping center 20 years ago. Okay. A great shopping center that everybody would want a loan on would have Blockbuster, Circuit City, Barnes and Noble, Radio Shack.
Right. Right.
They're all gone for the most part.
True.
But housing, whether it's a single family or condos, or apartments, you're always going to need a place to cook your food, sleep, go to the bathroom. That's not going to change. Technology is not going to change that. But things are different than when I got started. We used to build apartments that were very basic. We didn't even have, there were long rectangular buildings. Laundry was in the hallway. No fitness center or anything. The place I'm building now has 2 fitness centers, movie theater, game room, pet parks, multiple outdoor TVs, sauna, tanning, massage chairs, media room. I mean, on and on and on and on.
It's a whole village in there.
It's much more, So I think, that's obviously changing. One thing that's going to definitely change is malls. Malls are dying.
Fair enough.
And yet, they're big pieces of property in really great locations. So I think there'll be, well, if you're already seeing it happen, but more and more malls will be retrofit to different kinds of uses, a mix of housing, restaurants, that kind of thing. So certainly that. If the population expands and jobs are still plentiful and interest
Yep.
rates are good, then housing is always an opportunity. I think in commercial, my brother-in-law is a big commercial developer.
Okay.
He's done a lot of stuff with hospital type uses,
Sure.
medical type uses, because that's going to be a bigger and bigger thing.
Makes sense.
In
Totally.
commercial, yeah. But read all the stuff. Things will change and adapt over time. But yeah, don't let technology destroy whatever it is that you're doing. Try to figure a way to do something that technology can't destroy.
Well said right there. So you've built up your wealth through different avenues over the years, and right now you're really focused on like developing apartment units. Why has that been like your niche that you've particularly picked?
Well, we've also done developed a big neighborhood of 479 houses, well, a bit more than that now.
Sure.
And condominiums and some institutional stuff, and I think people are still making a great success out of that. But when you do a development like that, every lot that you sell, you're paying taxes on. Mm-hmm. Okay, there's nothing that you can depreciate, like in commercial real estate or apartments. House flip, you can't do that.
Sure.
So I've just focused on it because it is a steady source of income each unit every year.
Yep.
And for many years, it's tax sheltered by the depreciation. And we're in a period of time where the vacancies are ridiculously low and interest rates are ridiculously low. The challenge is finding the site, getting a reasonable construction cost. Construction's gotten more expensive.
Yes.
For a lot of reasons, including government regulations. But it's something that we specialize in. We know really well. We're geared up for it and do our own construction. So that's what we're focused on.
Okay. And obviously, like you said, you focused on it, kind of made it your thing, and have been successful with it. So that's great.
Nobody else should do it, though.
Nobody else should do it, though. For sure. All right. So now I have a few kind of like final round questions for you. So the first thing I want to ask is, I think, routines and rituals are so important to building success. So what's your morning routine, and what are some of like your daily and weekly rituals you practice?
Well, I don't think anybody should practice my rituals now because I've got, the staff is so good. My son is overseeing the construction. So it doesn't require a lot of time for me. Before, I was probably up early. I've never needed a lot of sleep, so I would get up early, work out. And when it was still dark, we'd go to a club and work out, my wife and I, and then get into the office. And there's just any number of things that are going on at the time.
Right.
If you're building something, you're meeting with contractors. If you're, if there's operational issues. But I generally work until 5 or 6 o'clock and go home and read the paper and all that. Pretty normal stuff.
Okay. Yeah, so pretty standard, like you said, your life maybe a while ago would be different than it is now. Yeah,
but you're a health advocate, working out and making sure you're eating right makes a big difference in your ability to think and to handle stress, for sure.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah, and I know it does for me, and I know you're a big advocate of it as well. So that's great. Yeah. So I know you're a big fan of self-education as well. And what do you do to stay sharp? Is like books, podcasts, like what do you do to educate yourself?
Well, I because I'm the age I am, I didn't grow up listening to podcasts. Didn't have them. But I think they're fabulous. And if I was in a mode of wanting to learn the business, I think that's what you're doing is great. I think it's, people can learn a lot that way. But I would read, like I said, I Think and Grow Rich and the various other real estate books I would read. And all the periodicals that relate to the business that you're in, you should get them. There's all kinds of stuff that's free or pretty close to free.
Yeah.
All kinds of great stuff on the internet now, along with all the terrible stuff on the internet now. But in recent years, I've just been more interested in history and stuff like that. Wanting to understand, or science. I'm trying to understand the universe, trying to understand physics, which I don't at all. Matter of fact, I do. I read a book. I always have a book going, and then I listen to a book while I'm walking.
Sure.
And I try to walk now 10,000 steps a day. And the other day I can't remember the guy's name. He was a Japanese scientist.
Okay.
And he was explaining in this book all about the origins of the universe and where things are going and quantum physics and I was trying to understand this stuff. And I'm walking along. I walk right into a tree. I'm so focused on it. But there's just a wealth of things you can learn. And just make good use of your time.
Right.
And it's habits. It's like you propose. Make sure your habits are healthy ones and productive ones if you want to be healthy and productive.
Right? No doubt. That's a important point, and glad to see you don't have too many marks or scuffs from running into the tree.
No. If I had a little, it's embarrassing. I don't think anybody saw me.
Sure, but good deal. So, what hobbies? So you kind of started talking about it already. Like, what hobbies do you have outside of real estate?
I like to ski, downhill ski. Some kayaking. I used to be obsessed with mountain climbing. Mountain climbing probably fed that, danger thing for me.
Yeah.
It also forced me I do one major climb every year at least.
Okay.
And it would make me get into really great shape.
I bet.
And because you have to beat the mountain. And then I got into a situation with a guide who was probably mentally ill, but he got me into a really terrible situation on a mountain in Colorado that scared me.
Yeah.
The only time in my life I've been scared from that.
Okay.
And I just quit. I got kids and I got a wife, and
Sure.
I said this isn't responsible anymore. But that was probably the hobby that I was most obsessed with. I used to do a lot of backpacking, and love that. But now it's more tennis and that kind of thing.
Right.
Walking, reading,
It's always something active.
Yeah.
Okay. If you could meet one person in world history, it could be alive or dead, who would it be, and why?
So it'd be hard to narrow it down. Initially, I'd probably say Winston Churchill because I just finished a 1,000-page book about him and fascinating, funny,
Yep.
never quit, went through terrible turmoil, when he nearly didn't have a future after leading troops in Turkey and Gallipoli in World War I. But he had, when he was very young, like 16 years old, he said, "I will be Prime Minister of Great Britain and lead it through a crisis."
He said
And
that.
and he did. Came from parents that were, abusive, really, but loved him, loved his father. Either him or Thomas Jefferson, because Thomas Jefferson was such a inquisitive person and accomplished so much.
Yeah.
Really a genius.
I believe it. Both would be great people to meet,
Yeah.
for sure. If you could visit anywhere in the world, where would it be?
Well, there are not many places left we haven't been, and so I'm better at saying what really moved me, and that was the most recent trip we did to New Zealand.
New Zealand, yeah.
With
I
our
saw
kids.
that.
It's there's only 5 million people there.
Really? In all of New Zealand?
Absolutely awe-inspiring beauty. And what's really refreshing about it is it's like 1950. You just walk on the plains. There's no people don't talk about politics, which was really refreshing at this time.
Yes.
So I think that was really a wonderful place to go, and I would really recommend it. It's really far. If you don't have any money, I used to love backpacking,
Sure.
and Yosemite is there's so many wonderful places.
Yeah.
And the Tetons are absolutely beautiful. I climbed
Yeah.
Grand Teton. I thought that was magnificent.
Sure.
So yeah, we have a few places that we haven't been, but I don't think anything's going to top where we were. Chile.
Chile. Yeah, South America.
Yeah. I'd like to. We've been to Patagonia, but I'd like to be there much more and maybe raft through. Rafting the Grand
More
Canyon.
of us.
Done that. That's incredible.
You've done
That's
the
fun
Grand
to do.
Canyon?
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah, that's really fun to do.
All sorts of challenges.
Yeah, so I
yourself
don't
through.
know, maybe the moon.
The moon. You never know. It's possible. All right. And last question. And I think this is a really important one. So when it's all said and done, how do you want to be remembered?
I think I'd like to be remembered as somebody who made the lives of people around him more fun, and better. That I was, did my best to be fair with people and to try to share what I've done. I'm not going to focus on my imperfections because I'm full of them. But
Sure.
hopefully
We all
people
are.
will remember the good things and not the things I didn't quite live up to my standards on. But yeah, I think if you could impact people around you, that really should be your primary. It shouldn't be all about you, right? And it shouldn't be, we're talking about money, but I do want to say you can't decide you're going to be rich.
Okay.
You have to decide, this is where I think there's a great opportunity. I'm just going to go at beating everybody else out, trying to do it better than everybody else, and then the money just comes. You can't say, I want to be a millionaire, and you become a millionaire. You can't. That's not how it works. I think the money just comes as a byproduct of doing things really well.
All right. And that's something that you've done. All right. Well, really appreciate your time, John. Thanks for coming on the show.
I've enjoyed it. Thank you.
Absolutely.